Welcome to episode 24 of the St. Charles podcast. I'm Eric Wood.
Father Mark Brown.
And we are here to talk about a bombshell, if you will, in the world of online Anglican circles. Joe, young Anglican, one of the most prominent ACNA layman content producers, has put out a perplexing video to me about 2 days ago with a Twitter storm that followed, where he announced that he is leaving the ACNA to join the Episcopal Church. And I have heard of people leaving, say, C4SO to join the Episcopal Church over real specific issues. I've even heard of a couple parishes doing that around the country. But it's so unusual to hear someone that I perceive to be on the right of these theological issues to announce something like that.
Yeah.
What do we make of this, Father?
Usually the people who leave, we've had people leave here to go to the Episcopal Church. And when they send me the letter, they're here, can you tell us about them? And one of the questions that I ask, are they faithful? My response is no, because by the time they left, I hadn't seen them for a year and they refused to talk to me or anything. So they're not faithful. To see someone proclaiming himself to be Orthodox, to leave and go to the Episcopal Church, is perplexing. And listening to his rambling over an hour video he put out, I'm listening to him and I'm constantly saying, did you go to your priest? Did you talk to anybody? Or do you just come up with this by yourself? And usually what happens with these online content makers in the church is they are just out there willy-nilly doing things under no guidance of a priest, deacon, bishop. They're just out and they come up with some of the weirdest and craziest things that I quit watching them because I'm just like, oh my gosh. But then, as you told me, a lot of young people watch them. And I thought, when you first told me that, I'm like, well, how in the world could anybody watch him without discerning that this guy doesn't know what he's doing? It's the blind leading the blind. And then I realized, I'm 61 years old. I've been down that road. I've seen everything. I lived through the mega church pastors, the evangelical, Oral Roberts, back when I was still in the Marine Corps. Telling everybody, if you don't give me X amount of money, God is going to kill me and take me away, like that's some sort of horrible thing. So that was in the 80s. I mean, I've lived through all this stuff, and we didn't have the internet. But when I saw things like that, I went to my pastor and said, what is this? And got guidance from my pastor. Far too many young people are getting their theology and everything else from the internet and from people who have no idea. I read a book, or I stayed at the Holiday Inn Express last night, and now they're online as some sort of theologian. And it bothers me to see it and see him do this, and his reasonings are if he sat down with his priest, I know he's in Doma, but if he had sat down with a good priest and said, these are my problems, it would have taken that priest about 5 minutes to correct him.
Here's what stings about it. Joe is someone who's very thoughtful, and like you were articulating, he came from, I think, a conservative Jewish background. And not Orthodox, but conservative, not Reform. And he was drawn to Anglicanism for all the right reasons, and he's very articulate at breaking down all these reasons. And, it stings when, it's the reverse Matthew Barrett, where the prominent person joins your denomination, it's a celebration. But when one of them leaves, it's like...
Well, that happens all the time. I mean, Rome celebrates every time an Anglican goes to Rome. It's all over the internet. When Marshall left Fort Worth after being ordained a priest within 6 months and went to Rome was happy and celebrates that all over the place. I know 2 Anglican priests who abandoned their parishes and went to the Orthodox Church and were received and chrismated into the Orthodox Church. At the same time, they were online talking about how great their bishops were, how great Anglicanism was, that much they loved their parish. And I remember both of them, the day before they announced they had gone to the Orthodox Church, were just so positive about everything. At the same time, they're doing this behind the scenes and quietly. I don't tolerate that. a couple of weeks ago, I had a young man came here from a Roman Catholic diocese outside of the area. He came to talk to me about being an Anglican, joining the Anglican Church. Okay, sure, come on in. And we sat down, we started talking, and out of his mouth comes these words: I'm a postulant for holy orders in the Roman Catholic Church. Whoa, stop. I stopped right there. Does your bishop know? Does your spiritual advisor know? Do not betray your bishop. If you're having these problems, you get out of the program right now and you figure out what you're doing, and then you do it. You don't keep misleading people like Marshall did, or these two Anglican priests did. You sit down and you talk with your spiritual father. Joe should have sat down and talked to his spiritual father, and he didn't. And that's on him. And some of the reasons he gave were just really...
It's a communion thing.
Well, it's a communion thing. And also, he's like that Redeemer, Zoomer Presbyterian. He says, I'm going to stay in the PCUSA because I'm going to change it and make it Orthodox again.
Reconquista.
Reconquista. My gosh, really? How narcissistic is that to think that you are going to do that? You know, and Joe has that same mentality with the tech. And I will just say this. Back in 2008, 2009, when the Reformed Episcopal Church, at the time I was a deacon in it, says, we're going to join the ACNA. And I remember Bishop Brope saying this, and I remember Bishop Morris echoed it. We're going to be the leaven. We're going to get them out of their error, like in women's ordination. And I just sat there and looked at them. Okay. The ACNA is still doing women's ordination. It's advancing, and we have a whole bunch of other issues coming up with the ACNA. And you had a church with multiple bishops, about 100 parishes, thousands upon thousands of laity, about 10%. I think 10% of the ACNA is the REC. And they can't affect change. Joe, what do you think you're going to do? That parish is going to swallow you up and you're going to lose your faith.
It might be, to my understanding, he's in law school, he's a very bright guy, and he's at Penn State's law school, which is a good law school. And I did a deep dive on the diocese that he looks to be joining. Because in the Episcopal Church, it really can vary diocese by diocese, where in Tennessee, in Dallas, in Central Florida, in Springfield, it can be sound. But then you have the opposite end of that spectrum, where in other places, it's just not.
No.
And I did a dive on who the bishop would be, assuming there's no non-geographical arrangement with the given parish, but I don't think Pennsylvania has a lot of that. His bishop would be Bishop Audrey Scanlon, and that's the picture.
Yeah.
Audrey Scanlon. And man, that's a lot.
You can be very smart and have no wisdom. Called book smarts, no common sense. I grew up hearing this term, he's so smart he doesn't know to get in out of the rain. Meaning you can have all the book smarts in the world, but you have no common sense. And we see people like that, and they have no discernment. Joe's in law school, very smart kid, okay? Where's your discernment? How smart was it not to talk to your priest? Well, maybe he did, Father Mark. Well, then why didn't he say it? Why didn't he say, after consulting with my priest, talking with my spiritual advisor, this is what I'm doing? When you hear all these people making these jumps, they never ever talk to their priest or their bishop. They make it on their own in this void, and they think they're smart. And what is it the Bible says? Thinking themselves wise, they became fools. Now he's joining a diocese that doesn't have a bishop. They have a woman cosplaying as a bishop. Really? Joe, you think that diocese is not going to swallow you up? You don't think they are ready? Okay, maybe Central Tennessee, a good moderate diocese. Okay, he might have a chance of staying there. But going there, whether it's the DEI hire, I bet you if you deep down in, she's all for abortion, homosexuality, transgenderism, all these things. You're going to join that group, Joe.
I think their argument is they will inherit it if they join it in numbers. And that's the whole Reconquista thing, that is like the boomer age profile ages out, which tends to be much more progressive, that the conservative people that have flocked to it will inherit the institutions, the endowments, the buildings, the things like that. And I mean, I hear that intellectually, and it probably is more feasible in the Presbyterian structure that Redeemed Zoomer's operating in.
Yeah.
But
there's no higher element out of the presbytery.
There's no bishops.
There are no bishops.
What they're not factoring in is the bad bishop factor of what that can do to even a good sound parish. And it takes me back to what I was able to see in my life experience in Alabama, which is a very progressive female bishop targeting the most sound like institution and priest in the diocese. And in this case, it was Andrew Pearson at the Advent, and he was doing things that they didn't like introducing the 1662 prayer book instead of the 79, and he just would not get on board with any of the current agenda on same-sex marriage, and that made him a target. And even if Joe has found a parish like that, which could exist in that part of Pennsylvania, I don't know how he gets around the bishop structure.
He doesn't.
I'm not aware of any diocese turning around within the Episcopal Church once it gets a progressive bishop.
Well, look what happened to Andrew.
Yeah.
He had a lot more pull, a lot more intellectual stability than Joe does. And where is he now? He's not down there at Advent. I think he's.
But I would submit to you that's not due to decisions that he made. That's due to legitimate persecution.
Right.
Whereas in the situation of Joe, he's just making this decision.
He's making that decision to go to Tech that has chewed up and spit out much more qualified, much more theologically advanced and sound priests. He's a layman going into that. What does he think he's going to do? Do you think his priest and his vestry is going to let him do whatever he wants?
When I hear him talk about Reconquista within the Episcopal Church, it sounds so childlike to me, because it assumes that people didn't try that. People have been trying that for 20-something years.
Oh, they were going back more than that. Go back into the 80s. People were fighting against, not everybody who left in 79, I mean, everybody who opposed what the Episcopal Church was doing in the 70s did not leave in the 70s. Okay, I would submit only a small amount of people left and made the continuing church.
It was an Anglo-Catholic thing.
Yeah, that was an Anglo-Catholic. So the evangelicals and everything else who stayed, and even the Anglo-Catholics who stayed in the Episcopal Church, we're going to change these things, was their mantra. That's why they didn't leave in 79, 80. Okay, it's 2026. The Episcopal Church is much worse off than it was in 79. They had no ability to stop it, because once the progressives got in, they self-generated additional progressives. And now, well, it's like, now, do you think they'll ever elect a bishop that's not going to be on board with women's ordination? No. Even up in central Tennessee, the next bishop that's going to be there. Look who just got elected in Alabama from Colorado. I mean, the guy has his pronouns in his bio sheet. You're like, really? Come on. I mean, that's the kind of people they're going to keep electing.
Yeah, but Tennessee's not like that. And Dallas shows us that it is possible to replace a perceived conservative within the Episcopal Church with another conservative.
Possibly, but eventually what's going to happen, the other bishops have to agree. Okay, so when you elect them, the bishops all come up, yay, nay, whatever. And so right now, yes, but as they get more and more progressive, more and more out there, they are going to stop these things. Anglican Inc., George Conger was talking about his annual parish report. For the first time in a long time, his parish shrunk. Not for anything he did. As a matter of fact, it shrunk in opposition to all the things he does. He's a good priest. But it's just he had more people die than came into the church.
It's the demographics of the region and the Episcopal Church.
Right. And he also talked about, I don't have the young people coming in. Okay, say young people do go into the Episcopal Church. How many of them are going to be Orthodox? How many of them are going to look for a church that promotes the culture that they like? the young Zoomer, the Generation Z, they say the young men are more Orthodox. Well, they're not the ones joining the Episcopal Church. It's the girls who are less Orthodox, more progressive, that are going there and perpetuating these things.
I think that's true everywhere except the dioceses that have been resistant to the worst excesses. I don't know if that's true in Nashville, Orlando, and Dallas. I think it is true everywhere else.
Well, how much longer can they hold out? I mean, look in the ACNA. We're never going to be like the Episcopal Church. We're never going to force women's ordination on anyone. And what happened in Doma? The bishop comes along, ordains his wife, and then goes to a parish that does not want women in holy orders. And what does he do? He gets rid of the priest. And now they have, and he sent a woman in there as their interim, and they're like, no. Now there's a new vestry.
And we're talking about Bishop Warner from the Diocese of Mid-Atlantic in the ACNA.
So he forced a parish, and the ACNA says, we'll never force you to take women's ordination. And here he comes in and he forced a parish. And that parish split, and part of the reason they don't like Derek Jones is because one of his priests, and I think one of his priests was actually the priest there, they went and formed another church. And a good portion of that parish left and went to this new plant, and I think it was Yorktown.
It's Yorktown and Williamsburg are
the two
places.
Okay, so the ACNA, these people tell us, oh no, we're never going to force you to, and here's a bishop, and none of the other bishops said a word.
I think part of what the animosity directed toward Bishop Derek Jones stems from is the fear that he would use the jurisdiction, the armed forces, to create like the opposite of C4SO, like a non-geographic jurisdiction that would facilitate non-women's ordination parishes.
Yeah.
And some people didn't like that.
No, they didn't like that. And so it's going to be that interesting in that what we see is that we see the progressives doing these things and say, we'll never force you. You see it in politics, you see it in the culture, and you see it in the church. And then they turn around and they force you. And then Derek Jones, I mean, he's against women's ordination. Well, in the military, they had women deacons, and he oversaw that. I mean, I talked to him about it. He wasn't on board with it. But that's the jurisdiction. I got to cover that. I got to provide cover for them. Okay, well, now that he's separated, they're all gone. I think last time I talked to him, he had 2 deacons, and they were given the choice of going to the ACNA or become deaconesses. Okay? I don't know whatever happened to that, but when they tout all the priests and the deacons that left him, most of them were the females.
You know, that's part of Joe's argument, is the women's ordination, and that being something that the ACNA did not use as the sine qua non, as the reason for leaving.
Yeah.
And that it's at least intellectually consistent in our paradigm. And to that, I would say, well, Joe, the water feels good. Come on this way.
Yeah,
instead of going to the Episcopal Church.
If that's your beliefs, you come to the continuing churches, or go Orthodox, or go Rome. But to go to the Episcopal Church, your complaining is that we didn't have a clear understanding, or we didn't define women's ordination, not we being the ACNA. Okay, so you leave somebody that's kind of muddled about it, about somebody who's not muddled about it. You're upset about the dual integrities, so you can go to where there's even dual on steroids.
Out of the frying pan.
Into the fire. I mean, you didn't think this through. It's like, is he a first-year law student? Because they haven't taught him to. The
part that I have.
It's like philosophy students. You listen to the great philosophers like that. You see them, and they'll tell you, your first-year philosophy student, there's no God. I'm an atheist. By the time you get to the end of philosophy, if you've really studied philosophy, what do you find? God.
The part that I have asked Redeemed Zoomer for a couple years now, and that I would also like to hear what Joe thinks about it, is what do you do if you have a young child? To bring a young child to a tip of the spear, wild Episcopal church. That is such a crazy thing to subject your child to in the hope that one day it will get better, or you will inherit it because enough people that are conservative join it. That's kind of a wild paradigm.
That's a false notion. What is your child going to be taught? We see it in schools. A parent can sit and talk and teach. And I've seen it here at this parish. I've seen parents telling their kids something, and then I say it, oh, okay, immediately it's okay, because I'm in a position of authority. So I'm very careful what I say, because kids will listen. You and I, did we listen to our parents all the time? No, but when that teacher said something, okay. It wasn't until I was in high school that I really started questioning my teachers. What's going to happen when Joe has kids and he's in that Episcopal church and they start teaching his children, God really didn't mean that. God really didn't say that. What are you going to do then, Joe? You're going to have a fight with your kids.
See.
Yeah, what they see.
Just having like a rebaptism of a transgender person to have a new name.
A new name. What kind of sermons are they going to hear? What are they going to be exposed to? So you may have all the noble reasons you think are noble, but what are you putting your child into? Okay? What kind of cesspool? I mean, would you let your child swim in a cesspool? No. Then why are you going and putting your bathing suit on next to a cesspool waiting for your children?
And it's not that every diocese in the Episcopal Church would be like that, but it's certainly that a lot of them are.
There's a lot of them are.
And it's driven by the bishop, in my experience, where so much of the direction comes from the bishop, because advancement opportunities for priests are directed by the bishops. And priests can be punished ultimately to the extent of their pension being at stake for getting crossways with their bishop. So there's all these incentives to get on board with your bishop's program. And if the bishop's program is this deconstructionist, modern stuff, what are you joining?
What if you're just going to a bishop who's just going to go along to get along? They're not going to say or do anything that's going to affect their position for their retirement. We see that in the ACNA. I mean, there's parishes in Foley Beach's diocese that you're like, what? And he does nothing. Okay, they use illicit prayer books, they do strange things, they promote homosexuality, they do all these things. And you never hear of any of the bishops in the ACNA ever correct. I mean, we had priests in their collars going to No King's Day because they hate Donald Trump. And they're going to these political, leftist, progressive, they just tried to have another seminar on women's voices in the church and how, we need to change names. So more women's names are there. And I'm listening to this. Now, the person who kind of broke it, Mark Marshall, he talked about it. Then it was Ann Kennedy who really jumped on it. And then Matthew Kennedy and they stopped it. Well, they think they stopped it. The normal, people involved with it, Esau McCulley, there he is. And they all came out about, you're just being mean to women, misogynist and all. That book that they were going to use was just filled with heresies. Mark Marshall just went through half the book and he was listening to all the heresies and all the insane things.
It's just like psychobabble.
And a psychobabble. And what did they do? It was okay. The bishops, 2 bishops were going to lead it in the ACNA. Bishop Dobbs, okay with it until the Kennedys and Marshall and some of the others rose up and said, hey, whoa, what is this?
I don't know how much Bishop Dobbs knew about it, but he did stop the province from blessing it.
Once there was an uproar, Well, then he didn't know anything about it. Well, I'm sorry, you're the boss. I mean, I was trained in leadership in the Marine Corps, and I remember as a very young second lieutenant, I was literally 1,000 miles away, and some people in my platoon got in trouble. And I was called off of leave. And I get there, and I remember the battalion command, XO just ripping me up and down. And I looked at him. This is how naive I was. I looked at him and said, sir, I wasn't even here. And Major Miller looked up to me. He was Brit. He was a British Marine. He looked up at me, and he said, Lieutenant, you're responsible, whether you know about it or not, whether you're here or not, because you are the platoon commander. Bishop Dobbs, you're responsible for it, whether you know about it or not, whether you're there or not, because you are the bishop. It's your duty to know everything that is happening. Now, will you? No, but as soon as you find out about it, there's no way, with 2 bishops being involved, that he didn't have an inkling or somebody in his office knew something was going on.
It really lends so much credence to everything Bishop Derek Jones has been saying.
the more we just sit back and watch the ACNA bishops, the more I'm going, I think Derek Jones is onto something. Yes, and the harder they yelled at him and screamed, and that's all stopped now. I'm like, the bishops in the ACNA protest too much, and a lot of the things he said, and you look at and came out, okay, well, he's got the proof. Oh, don't look at that. Wait a minute, even with Bishop Dobbs, and I'm going to get some ACNA folks mad at me. Was accused by Barnabas Peirce and Bishop Jones, Derek Jones, of financial mismanagement. That's what he was accused of. Barnabas Peirce was outside the ACNA. And they questioned it. So the ACNA, Foley Beach, hey, we will conduct an investigation. And what did they do? They got an accountant who was friends with the chancellor of Bishop Dobbs to do. So it's not transparent, it's not above board. Barnabas Peirce was the first one to go, we don't accept this. ACNA, it's over with, it's done. This is not transparent, this was not neutral, this was somebody tied to Bishop Dobbs who did and I read the thing, who did it. As an investigator, I would be pulled. I remember one time I went to my boss and I said, look, this investigation, this name right here, I went to high school with him. As soon as I said that, my boss took that file out of my hand. I hadn't seen the guy in 20-something years. No hint of impropriety. ACNA didn't do that with Bishop Dobbs. He may be totally innocent, but the way they did it, Barnabas Peirce has filed with the IRS saying, when you investigate this, understand we don't agree with what the ACNA did, nor do we agree with their explanation. CYA, they're covering themselves when the IRS comes in and goes, what's this money doing all this stuff? And believe me, you don't want the IRS coming in doing this. And I think Barnabas Peirce has broken ties with the ACNA over this. So there's things out there that everybody goes, oh, this is nothing. No, let's just say this. When Bishop Sutton, my old bishop, recused himself and then resigned as the dean and everything because of Archbishop Wood, I got nervous. And I was like, this isn't right. Something's going on. And I got a phone call. And he said, I know you are concerned about Bishop Sutton's clean. He's good. He's a good guy. He's one of the few good ones in the ACNA. And this was a guy who was bashing bishops right and left. He's got all the dirt on all the bishops, and that's Derek Jones. He called me to tell me, because he knew my concern, because he and I talked, and I told him, yeah, Bishop Sutton's my bishop, my examining chaplain. I like Bishop Sutton. He was great and all that. He called and said, hey, you don't have nothing to worry about with him. He's one of the good guys. Thank you. Okay, so Derek Jones, everything he has said so far, and I know Anglican Inc. doesn't like him, I know the ACNA doesn't like him, but I'm sitting back going, so far, y'all haven't proved him wrong at anything. Now you've yelled at him, but you're not proving him wrong. And any of the stuff y'all release, guys like me who have an investigative background go, okay, this stinks.
It looks kind of ridiculous when you look back at it 6 months after the fact, when you just see like what has come about the people making these accusations against Bishop Jones, like what they have
what has happened to them.
Yeah.
All these accusations that they make about him, now all of a sudden, you're on trial.
For worse stuff, or just objectively worse stuff.
Worse stuff. I mean, it comes down to Derek Jones was mean.
He's too much like General Patton.
I'm like, he was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. That's about the equivalent of a Marine Corps captain. And Marine Corps captains can be arrogant, mean SOBs. I was one, okay? I could sit with Bishop Jones and go, and he can revert to being an Air Force colonel, fighter pilot. It doesn't rub me the wrong way. That might rub you the wrong way, or Father Glore or somebody else. I'm just sitting there going, as is a normal colonel. No big deal.
I think part of it is people that have no military background, and that maybe being their first exposure to someone who's like an effective military person.
An effective leader, and who's going to tell you when you're right and when you're wrong. And he's not and in the military, when you're wrong, they don't sit down and have a 10-point plan on why you're wrong. you're wrong, they correct you right then and there. And they tell you. And it may not be like your mama correcting you. It's going to be, I've been corrected that way. I've corrected that way. I don't do that here at the parish. At times, I start twitching when I look at people going, I might have to, does the inner Marine need to come out in me because these folks are acting, in a way that is just downright childish. But they don't. So if you've never been in the military and you've never been around it, you don't understand. And I think we have 2-3 colonels that are retired that are here. We had 4. One passed away from a heart attack a couple of years ago. And the way I talk with them is totally different than the way I talk with the rest of the parishes. And we got a lady who was came out of the ranks as a captain in the Air Force. And she was on the vestry, and she was my attack dog. If somebody in the vestry started acting silly, I didn't have to say a word. I just looked at her, and that was it. And she would revert to being, well, that's mean, yelling, screaming. No, it's firm. And I think that's why they don't like Jones, is he's firm. Okay? This is right, this is wrong, black, white, and that's it, no gray area. And usually that's the way it used to be, and I'm saying it this way now in the military, the way it used to be in the military was black and white. Okay? There's no gray area. So everything so far Derek Jones has said publicly and privately about the ACNA has come to fruition. And getting back to young Joe, if he had sat down with his priest, depending on where his priest was, I think it would have done him a lot of good. Because I've had folks here, especially young people here, will come up and ask me questions. Why about this? What's this? And I talk to them. And most of the time, okay, it's an adjustment. They misread something. They misunderstood something. And they talk to their spiritual father, and they get the correct. Okay, they may not like it. So I don't understand that. Well, welcome to the club. Most of us don't understand some of the teachings of Christ, but it's his teaching. And you just sit and you talk and you listen. And then some people get mad when I'm watching them, and I say, quit acting that way. You're not acting like a Christian. Nobody's ever told me that before. Well, I think that's probably your problem, because we think we can act any certain way, and the priest has to be okay with it. I get called out. Father Gloria and I'll call each other out. The bishop will call me out if I'm straying away. And I think Joe has done himself great harm in what he's done. And if he had sat down with his spiritual father and talked, but he went out and read selective books, took selective things, and said, this is right. And he didn't look at the whole counsel of the church. This is what happens in nothing. He talked about the church fathers. You can go and find a church father that's going to believe anything. The church fathers, in many things, were, the magisterium, the original magisterium, were agreeable on things. But there's some things they didn't agree on. And what happened? You had a church council. And that set the law. That set the rule right there, all 7 of the councils. And some people don't like some of the councils because they don't like what the church fathers agreed to. Well, you don't get to choose that, sorry. That's the teachings of the church. But you watch it and you listen to people who say, well, this church father here, and you're like, okay, well, what's the entirety of it? He read off on Clement. Okay. He corrected. I'm like, well, have you read the 7 letters of Ignatius?
In a way, the Episcopal Church is schismatic from the Church of England by his logic. Does that mean that? There's no limiting principle to it?
Well, if by his logic, the Episcopal Church is schismatic from the Roman Catholic Church.
Everybody is.
If you follow his logic to his conclusion, everybody, even the Orthodox, are schismatic from the Roman Catholic Church in the West. Okay, is that true? No, that's this flawed logic. He hasn't thought this thing all the way through, what he is saying.
I think he's been talking and interacting with people from different dioceses within the Episcopal Church who can make a credible argument within their geography, and they can rely on the patristics, and that can be a compelling argument. But it just falls so flat on its face when you have a female bishop with those kind of teachings
Yeah.
in charge of the operation. Like, I don't know how the intellectual argument of appealing to the patristics and all that work when it's like, let's join the Pride Parade church. Like,
let's join the church is okay with murdering children. Let's join the church is okay with promoting sodomy. Let's join the church is okay with saying God is wrong in how he created people. He didn't really create you male. He made a mistake. You're really female. I mean, on and on and on. That's the church he is joining, and he thinks but just bluntly, he's arrogant enough to think he's going to change it.
Yeah.
He's going to get spit up and out. He can shoot up and spit out. But he's a young man. He thinks, just like Redeemer Zoomer, I'm going to change these things. No, you're not.
It could actually work in the Presbyterian context due to its
Possibly.
church governance model. I don't see
Just
how
in
it
the
can
session.
work in our world.
No, and maybe in a session, because the Presbyterian churches work on sessions and presbyteries. And outside of the session of the Presbyterian church, there's no real authority, like in the Baptist church. You might be a member of the Southern Baptist Convention, but whatever the convention does, you don't have to follow. Okay? That does not work in an Episcopal form of government. Whatever the bishop says, you follow. Okay? So whether it's Rome, the Orthodox, or the Anglicans, it's the bishops or the governance, not the congregation. And I know many, especially continuing churches, think, we're Congregationalists, and the congregation has all the say. No, it's the bishops.
We kind of are more than the Episcopal Church due to who owns the property.
On the property, yes.
In the Episcopal Church, the given diocese and the given bishop can own the property.
That's something new that they started. What's her name? Oh, we always called her the Squid Bishop because she got her marine biology degree down in West Florida. Catherine Jeffrey Schwartz. She started that and created that out of whole cloth, because that's not the way it was in the Episcopal Church until she got there. And then you had Episcopalians who were judges sitting on these cases, ruling in favor of the Episcopal Church, which they should have recused themselves. So all the way around, it was bad faith on how the Episcopal Church did it, but that's the way it is. It was like I was talking to somebody, what we need to do in the continuing church is the bishops need to stop this accepting parishes from other jurisdictions, because I don't like my bishop anymore. Sorry, this is your bishop. Unless he's teaching heresy, this is where you are. Okay? If the diocese is dying and everybody's splitting and going everywhere, okay, that's another thing. But we have some reasons, some really obscure reasons why people will leave a jurisdiction and go to another jurisdiction.
We have 40 years of that.
Yeah, and it's just constantly bishop shopping, we call it. And that's wrong. Yes, if I was in the Anglican Catholic Church, would I like the Archbishop of the Anglican Catholic Church? No. Would I be looking to subvert him? No, unless where he was wrong. Would I say things opposite of him? Yeah. But would I be... No. When I got here from the Reformed Episcopal Church, Bishop Upham, of blessed memory, before he installed me, I promised him I would not take the parish out of the diocese, because he knew they had made some huge mistakes with this parish. I didn't come here to do it. The next weekend, I had people say, when are we leaving? I said, I didn't come here to move. I didn't come here to take y'all out. Okay? And Bishop Upham died. Well, that promise died with him. And now dynamics and everything else have changed. Archbishop Schultz asked that same question. I said, at this time, I see no reason to leave. Okay? Nuanced differences, but I made that a promise to Schultz. I see no reason to leave at this time. So I've been the one kind of, when people want to leave, well, you don't jump. I kind of, is there a reason? Okay, we got a reason. And we weigh that, and the vestry weighs that. If we ever, like Father Glore and I said, if we ever left, we would go with our parish, because this is our parish. These are our people. This is our cure of souls. We will go with them. We may not agree with you. And if y'all went to the Episcopal Church, well, Father Glore and I go, bye. We're not going that way. But any other way, we're going to go with our parish, because this is who we are charged with the spiritual care for them. Not the political care, nothing else, the spiritual care. And I know that got off to a rambling topic, but that's what goes on in the continuum, which needs to stop.
So, Father, I've been thinking about if we totally agree that Joe's decision is wrong on multiple levels, what is right? What should we be doing? And I think like we can break bread with the Episcopal Fellowship for Renewal and the dioceses that are still sane within the Episcopal Church without joining dioceses that are not like that. And it is true that there are like 3 broad groupings of Anglicans in North America that used to all be together in the Episcopal Church. That's true, and that's not a good thing. And we should work to reunify, I would say, those Orthodox members within all those 3 jurisdictions. But I don't think joining a diocese that has all these new teachings is the way to go. Work with dioceses that don't have those teachings, fine.
Yeah. We can work with groups in the Episcopal Church, Society of St. Charles, for example.
The parachurch organization.
Yes, we can do that. We can work with them. We can work with the Roman Catholic churches if they would work with us in certain things, like on pro-life movements, social justice movements, and things like that. We can all work together on those things. It's the bishops that have to get us back into communion with each other. I don't take communion from the Roman Catholic Church. Why? There's rules. I don't take it from the Episcopal Church. Why? My bishop's like, we're not in communion with them. You can't take communion from anybody we're not in communion with. As a priest, I don't. So when we were up in Nashville a couple of weeks ago, I didn't. Did I want to? I saw nothing wrong with the Eucharistic prayer. I saw nothing wrong with any of the things that went on. It was to me, it was a valid Mass, but my bishop says no. I obey my bishop. I may not like it, but that's something in the continuing church that we have gotten kind of lax about. And do I agree with my bishop on this? It doesn't matter. I obey my bishop.
I like the Society of King Charles rules where they make any Episcopal parish do it right one. It has to be done by a male priest. It has to be done within certain parameters that make me feel comfortable as a layman going up there and receiving.
Yeah, I mean, if I had been given permission by my bishop, I would receive. I could take my collar off and I could walk into any Roman Catholic church. Well, not St. Mary's. The laity know me over there. So I can walk into any Roman Catholic church in North Alabama or an Episcopal church in North Alabama, and I can take communion. I don't have a collar on. I'm just Joe Blow. But what does the exhortation tell me? Take it rightly, above board. I'm not going to violate. It's like we had controversy back around December here. I'm like, don't take telling the laity from the Roman Catholic Church, because some people were going to doing that. I said, our rules are different from theirs. You're in their house. You obey their rules. Okay? My Eucharist is just as valid as the guy across the street according to Rome, because of where my orders come from, the Polish National Catholic Church. Okay? Just as valid as any Roman Catholic priest in this country. I don't walk over there and do this because you don't disrespect somebody else's rules in their house. Don't like it, don't have to like it. And that's what I told this parish. We don't have to like it, but we have to do it. Okay, that's the right thing to do. With the Episcopal Church, can I? Yes, I've sat down with Episcopalians. Oh, heck, you were an Episcopalian. You came here, and now look at you here. Have other Episcopalians that have come here. And I've had some that come and then are like, well, my daughter is going to serve at the altar. No. Yeah, and they leave, okay? I'm not going to break the rules. If you're going to come here, you got to, and you can't abide by our rules, okay, that's nice, leave. God bless you, go with God. We had to do the same thing. So I would love to work with pro-life Episcopalians here in Huntsville. Society of St. Charles. If we had a Society of Mary and Episcopalians, hey, can we join? Come on in.
I think Central Tennessee is much more fertile ground for finding conservative Episcopalians.
Right. And I would look at even talking to the bishop and say, look, okay, you're going to say we can't have a Eucharist with them. Can we have an evening prayer? Down in Pensacola, the Episcopal Church and the Roman Catholic Church had a service together with no Eucharist. And you could do that because there is no Eucharist, there's nothing, and use, okay, write one this year, next year is the 28th prayer book, the next year is the 1662 prayer. One of the three approved rites in the Episcopal Church or in us. Okay, and we can sit down and foster with like-minded people, even Roman Catholics, even Baptists that can come here. That's the way you build the church. We're fragmented because of, one, because of sin, but number two, because of all the man-made barriers that we've put in. And there's ways we can work around it and be one as Christ prays that we be one.
So much of it is driven by geography, where if you live in one of those 4 or 5 dioceses within the Episcopal Church that are still relatively conservative, you might find a parish there that is still got everything going that you like. If you live in somewhere like Fort Worth, well, it's real easy. You've got Diocese of Fort Worth right there. But there's a lot of places like Huntsville where we really are the only Orthodox Anglican presence in like a traditional sense. And I think where you are in America can dictate where your best Anglican church or parish might be.
Look, if I was on vacation down in Central Florida and it was a Sunday and there's no continuing parish close by, and I look, oh, there's Father Conger's parish. I'd go in and sit and worship, and would I take communion from him? No, I'd introduce myself, and he would understand, and there'd be no animosity between us as priests, and I would do that. Or if he's not around, okay, I'll walk into a Roman Catholic church and I'll worship with them, but I won't take communion. And if the priest's in front welcoming people, I'll identify myself and tell him who I am, and that I'm not coming to the altar rail. Okay, and we get along fine. I mean, I used to go across the street with Father Joy was there, and he'd be happy to see me. He'd welcome me. Did he ever come here? No. That's fine. But I would go over there and I'd just sit in the back, and I would worship with them on a weeknight or something, like a Saturday night before I went home. If I'm still here, just walk across the street, sit in the back and do it. Because I love going to Mass. And I would do that. If I'm traveling and there's not a continuing church or a Reformed Episcopal church or some other church that I know is sound, I'll slide into the back row in a Roman Catholic church, but I will not take communion. And I could, in my civvies, as we used to call them in the Marine Corps, in my civvies, I could walk up into any Roman Catholic church and take it. But is it right to do that? Now, I will say yes. They will say no. When I do that, I cause that priest to sin in their eyes. What Christian wants to cause another one to sin? I may not agree with it, just like the First Church Council talked about meat given to idols, and St. Paul talked about the weaker brothers. We have to do things sometimes for our brothers and sisters in Christ who don't understand the way we do, and they have some issues. Okay, I'm not going to cause them to sin. I'm not going to do something that leads them to sin. Because a Roman Catholic priest, if he knowingly gives communion to a non-Roman Catholic, he could be defrocked. Depends on the bishop. He can be defrocked, punished. I'm going to do that to a brother priest? No. And I'm going to tell my laity, don't you dare do that to a priest, whether he knows it or not. So there's ways we can work with each other until our bishops, get their heads together and figure out that we're all on the same team. We're fighting Satan and his minions. And where we can march together, let's march together. Where we can worship together, let's worship together.
It's a great ending point, Father.
It is. All right. So, I know it's been a while. Hopefully it won't be another 2-3 weeks, but it's Lent. So go to church. Pray. It's Lent. The more you pray, the more you go through Lent, the more you become like Christ. That's what Lent is all about. So go to church, practice the Lenten disciplines, and learn how to be more like Christ.